The father who chose right and won will shock you. When his fiancée demanded he abandon his motherless sons or lose her forever, he chose his children. Years later, the world would call him a hero, but what happened in between will leave you speechless. In the bustling city of Nawoya, Idayo Mbele lived a simple but happy life. He wasn't rich, but he was content. As a cab driver, he worked hard and came home every evening to his wife Remy and their 2 sons, Zalu, 11 years old and curious about everything, and little Tene, 7, full of questions and laughter. Their home was filled with noise, love, and the small joys that make life beautiful. Remy was the center of it all, always smiling, always holding the family together. One evening, as the rain poured heavily over the city, Idayo got a call that froze his heart. Remy had slipped in the bathroom. She'd hit her head. The neighbor rushed her to the hospital, but she didn't make it. Just like that, gone. Idayo rushed to the hospital drenched and shaking. When the doctor told him the truth, his knees buckled. Remy, his light, his love, was gone forever. He sat by her body, holding her cold hand, not understanding how life could change so fast. But he didn't have time to break. At home, 2 small boys were waiting. They didn't know their mother would never walk through the door again. He went home slowly, rain still falling, his clothes still wet, heart numb. Zalu and Tene ran to him the moment he stepped in, their faces lighting up, but they stopped when they didn't see their mother behind him. "Where's Mama?" Tene asked, eyes wide. Idayo knelt, pulled them close, and wrapped his arms around them tightly. He didn't cry. He couldn't. He swallowed his pain and said softly, "Mama's not coming back, but we're going to be okay." I promised. That night, the house felt empty. Remy's scent still hung in the kitchen. Her sandals were still by the door. Her laughter still echoed in their memories. But now, there was only silence. Zalu stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Tene clung to his father's shirt in his sleep. Idayo lay there in the darkness, staring at nothing, thinking of everything. He thought of school fees, of laundry, of waking up early to make breakfast, of how he would explain this to the boys when they were older. He wasn't just a cab driver anymore. He was now mother and father, protector and provider, comfort and strength. In the days that followed, people came to visit, to mourn, to give food and condolences. But eventually they left. The casseroles stopped coming, the calls slowed down, and it was just Idayo and his boys again, trying to learn how to live in this new world without the woman who meant everything. He made a silent vow standing by her grave. "I will never abandon our children. No matter how hard it gets, I'll be there for them, for you." From that moment on, Idayo changed. He became stronger, not because he wanted to be, but because he had to be. For Zalu, for Tene, for Remy. Each morning in the Mbele household started before the sun came up. Idayo would wake to the sound of his alarm, eyes heavy from barely 3 hours of sleep. He'd tiptoe into the boys' room, careful not to wake Tene yet, and start the day. Braiding Tene's hair was never easy. His hands were rough from years of driving, and the little girl at the salon had once giggled, saying, "Uncle, you're doing it wrong." But he didn't stop trying. Remy used to do it with ease. Now he watched tutorial videos on his old phone, paused them, and tried again with trembling fingers. After that came the uniforms. Zalu's shirt always needed ironing, and the school insisted on neat creases. The iron had a loose wire, and the stove worked only when hit twice at the side. Some mornings, he served the boys rice that was half burnt, and sometimes they had only bread with water. But the boys never complained. They saw the tired lines under their father's eyes, the cuts on his hands, and they ate with quiet gratitude. Then he would walk them to the school gate, kiss their foreheads, and rush back to start his cab shift. He drove all over Nawoya, taking passengers from noisy markets to quiet offices. No break, no lunch, just quick water sips between rides. He accepted every fare, no matter how far or small the pay. By evening, he picked the boys up again. While they played or did homework in the back seat, he drove late into the night. Sometimes, he let them sleep in the car if the last passenger took him far out. He'd look at them in the rearview mirror, wrapped in old sweaters, and his heart ached. Back home, after finally getting them into bed, he would sit beside Zalu and go through his math homework. Sometimes he solved the wrong equation. Zalu would correct him, and they would laugh. But Idayo never let sleep win until both boys were settled. For Tene, he sang lullabies, even when his voice cracked. Neighbors started to whisper. He should send them to boarding school, they said. He's just a cab driver. How long can he do this? But Idayo always smiled and answered the same. I don't need a break from my children. Every time he saw Zalu smile proudly after a test, or heard Tene giggle in her sleep, he knew it was worth it. It wasn't about pride. It was about a promise. He had told Remy he would take care of their children, and every tired step, every sleepless night, every challenge, it was his way of keeping her memory alive. He wasn't the perfect parent. He was just a man trying to be both father and mother. And though his arms ached and his heart was weary, he carried the weight with love. Because for Idayo, his sons weren't a burden. They were all he had left. Zumela entered Idayo's life when he wasn't looking for love. He had stopped at a car wash after a long day, his taxi covered in dust and grime. She was there with her red sports car, heels clicking on the pavement, sunglasses perched high, and a phone always in hand. Confident, stylish, and glowing with charm, she noticed Idayo's tired eyes and oil-stained shirt. Instead of ignoring him like others did, she smiled and said, "You look like you work too hard." They talked that afternoon about business, dreams, and life. Zumela owned a successful boutique in Kasaba Mall. She was bold, driven, and different. That weekend, she called. The next, they had coffee. By the third weekend, they were officially dating. At first, it felt like something new and bright. She laughed easily, told Idayo he deserved more than night shifts and burnt rice. She even said she admired his strength as a single father. And the boys, they liked her too. The first time she visited the house, she came with burgers, fries, and 2 toy helicopters. Zalu's eyes lit up. Tene hugged her legs tightly. Zumela took pictures, posted them online with captions like, "Weekend with my boys," and people commented, "What a sweet stepmom." But over time, something changed. Zumela stopped bringing food. She still came in expensive clothes, but now she just sat on the couch, phone in hand. When Tene showed her a drawing of their family, with a smiling mommy in the sky, she forced a smile and said, "That's interesting," before turning away. She called Zalu too loud when he played music during homework. She said things like, "I need peace," or "Why don't they just stay in their room?" She never helped with dishes or folding laundry. She rolled her eyes when Idayo tried to cook while helping Zalu with schoolwork. "You need a better system," she said, without offering one. Once, when Tene spilled juice, Zumela didn't clean it or comfort her. She just said, "This house is always sticky." Her visits felt colder. She no longer greeted the boys with hugs. Her voice got sharper. Her smile faded the moment she stepped inside. Still, Idayo tried to make it work. He thought maybe she was adjusting. Maybe the weight of his life was too different from hers. Maybe she just needed time. But the boys noticed. Zalu stopped showing her his drawings. Tene stayed in her room when Zumela came over. The laughter that once filled the house became whispers. Idayo felt the shift too, but he hoped things would get better. He had lost so much already. He didn't want to lose another chance at happiness, so he told himself she was just tired, that the kids were just being shy, that love would fix it all. But deep down, something didn't feel right. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Sunlight poured through the thin curtains as the smell of fried plantain filled the kitchen. Idayo had just come back from the early shift and was washing his hands when he noticed something odd. Zumela was already at the table, eating eggs, bread, and tea. But Zalu and Tene sat nearby with empty plates, quietly watching the food. Idayo walked over and asked softly, "Zalu hasn't eaten yet. Did they eat?" Zumela didn't look up. She chewed slowly, sipped her tea, and finally muttered, "They're not my responsibility." The words hit like a slap. Idayo stood frozen for a moment, his hands still wet. Zalu blinked, pretending he didn't hear. Tene looked at the floor. Idayo moved quickly, made toast for the boys, and served them with a forced smile. "Come on, eat up," he said, hiding the sting in his chest. The rest of the day was tense. Zumela barely spoke to the children. She scrolled through her phone, called her assistant about boutique deliveries, and left her plate in the sink. The boys stayed in their room, whispering and doodling on old homework pages. That night, after the boys had gone to bed, Zumela stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes cold. "We need to talk," she said. Idayo wiped his hands on a cloth. "Okay, what's wrong?" She didn't sit. "This isn't working for me," she said. "I didn't sign up to be a full-time stepmother. Your life is too complicated. These kids, they're too much." Idayo stared at her. "They're my sons, Zumela." She shrugged. "And I'm not their mother. I don't want to raise someone else's children. I want peace. Not tantrums and school pickups and drawing competitions. His throat tightened. So, what are you saying? She walked closer, her voice firm. It's me or them. If you want a future with me, they can't be in the picture every day. Send them to your sister. Put them in a hostel. Do something. I didn't agree to raise 2 boys. Silence filled the room. Idayo felt his heart beat louder than ever. He looked at the photos on the wall. Remy smiling with Zalu on her lap. Tene covered in cake on his 2nd birthday. The drawing Zalu had made of their family after Remy's funeral. He thought of the nights he stayed up with Tene during her fevers. The mornings he helped Zalu solve math problems, with one eye open from fatigue. He remembered the promise he made, holding them close the night Remy died. We're going to be okay, I promise. Idayo inhaled deeply. They're not a burden, Zumela. They're my heart. If that's too much for you, then maybe you're not the one. Zumela scoffed, picked up her purse, and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Idayo stood still for a long time, the silence louder than ever. But somehow, the house felt more peaceful than it had in weeks. Zumela sat on the edge of the couch, arms folded, face tight. Idayo stood by the kitchen doorway, wiping his hands on a towel, unsure of what was coming next. He had sensed her distance, her cold tone lately, but nothing could have prepared him for what she said next. I can't build a future with 2 children from another woman hanging around, she said bluntly, her voice sharp and unforgiving. I want my own family, Idayo, not raise someone else's. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Idayo didn't respond right away. He blinked slowly, heart pounding, mind racing. Zumela didn't stop there. You have 2 choices, she said, standing now, staring him straight in the eye. Send them away to your relatives, or lose me. It felt like the ground beneath him shifted. Idayo had faced a lot in life, the long hours behind the wheel, the late nights making sure Zalu finished his homework, the mornings rushing to fix Tene's hair before school. But this was a different kind of pain. It cut deeper than exhaustion. Send them away? He repeated, barely recognizing his own voice. Yes, she said, picking up her purse. Your sister lives in Nundira. The boys will be fine there. They're young. They'll adjust. He took a slow breath. You think I'd send my children away like a package? Zumela rolled her eyes. They're holding you back, Idayo. Look at us. We could have peace, travel, late-night dates without interruptions. But every time I come over, it's noise. It's chaos. It's you rushing to make school lunches. They're not noise, he said quietly. They're my sons. I'm not asking you to stop being their father. I'm asking you to create space for us, for me. Her tone softened, but it didn't hide the selfishness behind her words. He looked past her, toward the boys' room. He remembered the night Zalu cried for Remy, and Idayo stayed up telling him stories, just to make him smile. He remembered how Tene once brought him a crooked paper flower and said, "This is for being the best daddy. You want peace?" Idayo said finally. "I find peace when I tuck them in. I find joy when Tene sings his little songs while brushing his teeth. I find strength in Zalu's laughter. That's my peace." Zumela's face hardened again. "Then you've made your choice." "I have," he nodded. "And it's not even a hard one." Without another word, she turned and walked out. No goodbyes. No looking back. Just the sound of the door closing. Idayo stood still for a moment. Then he walked quietly into the boys' room. They were fast asleep, breathing softly. He kissed Zalu's forehead, then Tene's, and whispered, "No one's sending you anywhere. Not while I'm alive." Idayo stared at Zumela. Her words still echoed in his ears. But this time, he didn't tremble. He didn't beg. He didn't try to explain fatherhood or guilt or love. He simply stood up, calm, steady, certain. "You want me to abandon my blood," he said quietly, but every word struck like thunder. "Then you don't deserve to be in this house." Zumela blinked. "Are you serious?" He looked her directly in the eyes. "They came from my heart. You came from a boutique. Go back there." The silence in the room grew heavier than any argument. Zumela's lips parted in shock, but no words came out. She didn't expect this. She thought he would hesitate, maybe try to compromise. She didn't know the kind of man she was dealing with. "You're throwing me away for 2 kids, she scoffed, voice rising now, trying to gain back control. Idayo didn't flinch. "They are not 2 kids. They are my sons, my reason to wake up, my strength when the day beats me down." Zumela's face twisted with disbelief. Unbelievable. She picked up her handbag from the couch with one dramatic swing and walked to the door. But before leaving, she turned to give one last blow. You'll regret this, Idayo. No woman will accept you with baggage like that. He shook his head slowly. If she calls my children baggage, then she's already lost. The door slammed. Just like that, she was gone. There was no applause, no music, just the sound of the refrigerator humming and the faint laughter of Zalu and Tene from the back room, unaware of what had just happened. Idayo leaned against the wall, a deep breath escaping his chest. He felt like a storm had passed, and now the sun could rise. Later that evening, he made fried plantains and stew for dinner. The boys ate happily, giggling at Tene's silly jokes. When Zalu asked, "Is Auntie Zumela not coming back?" Idayo smiled gently and said, "No, son. She went back to her shop. She wasn't meant to stay." Zalu nodded. Tene didn't ask anything else. They just kept eating. That night, after they'd gone to bed, Idayo sat at the edge of the couch. He thought about love, about loneliness, about all he'd given up. But deep in his chest, he felt light, like he had protected something sacred. He whispered to himself, "I may be alone, but I'm not empty. I have my boys." He walked to their room one more time, stood at the door, watching them sleep, their peaceful faces, their tiny breaths, their innocence. This was his life, and he had chosen it with both eyes open. Life without Zumela wasn't easier, but it was quieter and real. There were no more cold stares or tense silences at the dinner table, but there were also no breaks. No one to watch the boys when Idayo had to take a late-night shift. No one to help fold laundry or run quick errands. Still, Idayo didn't complain, not once. He woke up earlier, worked harder, and held his sons even closer. In the mornings, he still rushed to make breakfast, but now Tene, only 7, would sit on the counter and peel boiled eggs, proudly declaring, "I'm the chef today." Zalu took on more too. He washed dishes after dinner, even learning how to iron his uniform when Idayo was running late. The house became a team zone. They started calling themselves Team Mbele. One evening, while sweeping the living room, Zalu picked up an empty jar and said, "Let's save money in this, for something big, for our future." They labeled it with a marker, Team Mbele Future. Every time Idayo came home with spare coins, they dropped them in. It wasn't much, but it made them feel like they were building something together. Weekends weren't about malls or outings anymore. They were about cleaning the house, playing board games, or sometimes dancing to old songs in the living room. Tene loved to play pretend, acting like a little shopkeeper. Zalu became his #1 customer, and Idayo always paid with hugs. Laughter returned to the house. It echoed through their walls like it hadn't in months. Then came the moment that melted Idayo's heart. One Friday night, he returned from a long shift. His back ached, his shirt soaked with sweat. But as he stepped into the house, he froze. The floor was shining. The dishes were done. The lights were dimmed. A warm smell of rice and beans filled the air. On the table was dinner, neatly served. And there were his boys, standing with shy smiles. "We did it ourselves," Zalu said, "because you chose us." Idayo dropped his bag and sat down slowly. He looked at them, his sons, not just as children now, but as partners in survival. Tene climbed onto his lap and wrapped his arms around his neck. "We love you, bub." Idayo couldn't speak for a moment. His throat tightened, not with sadness, but with a feeling deeper than words. This was the reward. This was the meaning behind every sacrifice. Later that night, he dropped more coins in the jar, tapped the lid and whispered, "Team Mbele, we're going somewhere." He didn't know where, but with love like this, he knew they'd reach somewhere beautiful, together. Zalu wasn't just a regular boy. He was smart and curious. When his school announced a regional robotics competition, he threw himself into building a small robot, with parts he saved from old toys and broken gadgets. Night after night, he worked hard, teaching himself from videos on his worn-out phone, even after helping with chores at home. Idayo watched quietly, proud but never interfering. Zalu's determination paid off. On the day of the competition, with nerves and excitement mixed, he presented his robot. The judges were impressed, not just by the robot, but by Zalu's clear passion and confidence. When they announced his name as the winner, Zalu's face lit up brighter than the trophy he held. It wasn't just a prize, it was proof that hard work and heart could beat any obstacle. Meanwhile, little Tene found his own way to shine. Inspired by everything his father did, he started writing poems about his family. One evening, he shyly showed Idayo a short poem titled, "My Father, My Hero." It was simple but full of love, describing the sacrifices Idayo made, and how strong he was for his sons. Idayo shared the poem on social media, and to everyone's surprise, it touched thousands of hearts. The poem went viral, spreading far beyond their city. People were moved by the love between a father and his boys, and messages poured in from strangers encouraging them to keep going. Soon, their story caught the attention of a local foundation that supports children from single-parent families. The foundation offered Zalu and Tene scholarships to help them with school fees and extra classes. This was a game-changer for Idayo and his sons. For the first time, they felt like doors were opening, not just because of luck, but because of their effort and courage. TV stations also heard about the Mbele family. Reporters came to their modest home, calling them the unbreakable family. On camera, Idayo spoke softly about the challenges they faced, while Zalu and Tene smiled shyly. Viewers everywhere admired their strength and unity. The story was shared and reshared, becoming a symbol of hope for many struggling families. But the fame never changed the family. Idayo still drove his cab, still helped with homework, and still tucked his boys in every night. Zalu kept building robots, dreaming bigger with every project. Tene kept writing poems, his words now inspiring many. Together, they were more than a family. They were a team, proving that love and determination could overcome any hardship. The world saw them as heroes, but for Idayo, Zalu, and Tene, the real victory was simply being together, growing stronger every day. One quiet evening, just as the sun was dipping behind the rooftops of Nawoya, there was a knock at the door. Idayo opened it, and there stood Zumela. Her makeup was light, her clothes simple, nothing like the confident boutique owner who used to visit with flashy bags and designer shoes. She looked unsure, eyes slightly wet, voice soft. "I made a mistake," she said. "I miss you. I miss us." For a moment, Idayo just stood there, silently watching her. His boys were in the kitchen, laughing while setting the table for dinner. The scent of warm stew filled the air. The home that once struggled to stay standing now carried peace, laughter, and love, all without her. Zumela stepped forward slightly, searching his face. "You're doing great with them. I didn't know what I had." Idayo looked into her eyes, calm and steady. There was no bitterness in his heart, no anger left to throw, just truth. "You left when we needed love the most," he said gently. "You wanted me to send them away. That wasn't love, that was selfishness." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. He continued, "A partner is someone who stays when it's hard, someone who doesn't ask a father to choose between his children and romance. You walked away from loyalty, from family. Now, we've built something stronger, without you." Zumela's eyes dropped. "Can't we at least talk?" Idayo shook his head. "There's no space here for people who run when the wind gets strong. We're not angry. We've just moved on." Behind him, Zalu peeked around the corner. "Papa, the food is ready," he called. Idayo smiled at his son, then turned back to Zumela. "Take care of yourself," he said warmly. "I hope you find peace." And then, he gently closed the door. Not in anger, not in revenge, just in peace. Inside, he joined his sons at the table. They held hands, said a quiet thank you prayer, and ate together like they always did. In that small room, there was no space for regret, only love, only growth, only family. Years passed like pages in a cherished book. The little house that once echoed with struggles and whispered prayers now rang with celebration. On a warm morning, dressed in his best clothes, Idayo stood tall in a crowd of proud families. His heart beat fast as he watched Zalu walk across the stage in a black graduation gown. The boy he once stayed up late with, helping solve math problems after long nights of driving, was now a full-grown man, an engineer, standing with honor. When Zalu received his degree, he turned to the crowd, found his father, and raised it high. Everyone clapped, but Idayo's claps were mixed with quiet tears. Tene sat beside him, now a young woman, smiling brightly. She leaned over and whispered, "He did it, Papa. You did it." Not long after, Tene had her own moment. She published a book titled Raising Us. It told their story, of a father who chose his children, who stood strong when life pushed him down. The book became a bestseller. People everywhere were touched by the honesty and the hope inside each chapter. The world finally saw what the children already knew, that their father was a hero. One day, during a live interview on a national TV channel, a journalist sat across from Idayo and asked, "With all you went through, the long nights, the heartbreak, the sacrifice, what made you stay when others would have walked away?" Idayo smiled gently, his eyes shimmering with emotion. He looked into the camera and said softly, "Because love isn't real if it has conditions. My sons were never a burden. They were always the blessing." The studio went quiet for a moment. It was the kind of silence that comes when truth fills the room. He continued, "People told me to send them away, to take a break, to chase happiness. But how could I find joy if it meant abandoning my own blood? They needed me. And now, look at them. That's all the reward I ever wanted." Viewers across the country watched and wept. Many wrote in the comments, "This man is what true fatherhood looks like." Others shared their own stories, inspired to hold their families closer. Idayo never became a millionaire. He didn't buy a mansion or drive fancy cars, but he raised children who loved deeply, who gave back, who changed lives. And that was worth more than gold. His story wasn't loud. It didn't begin with fame. It began with love, stayed with loyalty, and ended in legacy. Because real love protects. Real parents stay. And when you choose your children over temporary pleasure, the world eventually sees. And when it does, it stands up and claps. Just like they did when Zalu became an engineer. Just like they did when Tenny became an author. Just like they did for the father who chose right and won. If this story touched your heart, then take a moment and think, how many children out there are waiting for someone to choose them the way Idayo chose his sons? How many fathers, mothers, uncles, or guardians need to hear that real love means staying, not leaving? That true family isn't about comfort, but commitment. Maybe you know someone who is struggling, standing at a crossroads between responsibility and escape. Share this story with them. Let them see that choosing love, no matter how hard, leads to a reward greater than money or fame. It leads to legacy. It leads to children who grow strong because someone believed in them. And if you're a parent, a single father, a struggling guardian, this is your reminder. You are not alone. Your sacrifices matter. Your late nights, your silent tears, your hidden strength. It's not wasted. One day, like Idayo, you too will see the fruits of your love. You'll hear thank you in a way that will make every hardship worth it. Let's keep stories like this alive. Stories that remind us of the power of choosing family, the strength of love without conditions, and the beauty of staying when others walk away. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories that touch the heart. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay loving, stay true.